Argentina's central bank raises its interest rate to 118% as the currency becomes devalued and they move into their hyperinflationary phase. And we'll be talking about that, whether or not that could happen here, and what we can do with that. In other news, Ron Johnson launches some wisdom on us from a former president, talking about the military-industrial complex and whatever else we have coming with that. So we'll be talking about that, what's happening there, and what we do with that. A Minnesota town has their entire police force resign, leaving the chief with zero help and no applicants to come back in and take their place. And finally, in the biggest news of the day, we've got to talk about indictment number 4. And this is not going to be like the regular indictments where we had the big theatrical version of New York or Miami or even DC. This is going to be more like the straight-to-video version, like Aladdin 4 or all the Air Bud sequels that went straight to video or made for TV. So we will talk about that, what's happening with this, and how the DOJ in Georgia tried to keep this one fresh by indicting a whole bunch of people at the same time. It is going to be all of this and more. And in a noisy bar in Avalon, I tried to call you, but on a midnight watch I realized, why twice you ran away. I am J. Edgar, and this is Contemporary. No, Spartan, the show is not over yet. We are just beginning here tonight, over here on Contemporary. And we do have a lot to go over here today. It was actually a relatively slow news day throughout the news of the normal side because most everybody was focusing on indictment number 4. And I don't know why necessarily because, I mean, what is this going to... Legitimately, what is this going to change? Oh, he got indicted again. Oh, I wonder if he's going to go to jail. Oh, do you think that he's going to get a mugshot or take a perp walk or be remanded to jail or what? Oh, what is this going to be? It's the same thing that we saw every single time. We are going to talk about it. We're going to go over what's happening with it and what this means and what the new charges are, because I will give Fani Willis some credit. She tried to keep it all fresh, especially with the racketeering thing, and that is... I mean, that's a nice touch, because then, you know, everybody who was involved in this, everybody who was ever in Donald Trump's close circle is now indicted for trying to use mafia tactics in an election. Really? And now they're trying to, like, by the way, with this out there, this being fresh, they're trying to get, like, Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and a host of other states to do the same thing. Because, of course, they just want to keep the guy in a courtroom forever and ever and ever. But, you know, the more they do this, the more people are starting to realize. And I am impressed by the American people with 7 years of wall-to-wall, this is the most evil thing that could possibly ever happen coverage of the big orange man. There are people that are actually starting to realize, hey, we think that he might be getting railroaded here, but we'll be talking about that at the bottom of the show. We've got some stuff to cover at the top over here on Contemporary, so strap yourselves in, tell some friends, get some people in here. We'll get some live chat going. We'll talk about what we see with the news here, and We'll go over it all over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming, such as the Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, the R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys, Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, Silent Caster, Harworld Chronicles with Papa Palpatine, and Overruled with KTZed. Go check out all that great programming as we aim to bring you a better news and culture experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we all got our news and our culture from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses and people that hate us. Stop doing that. Don't do that no more. Get your news and your culture from people who are just like you, people who've had to make some of these same decisions that you've had to make throughout your life, and people who are all around great people to be around and entertaining to do as well. By the way, confirmation. As we come closer to setting up a new channel, by the way, the interviews will be coming on a brand new channel, because otherwise I'm getting algorithmically demoted on this channel here. But Tweets by Brit of Tweets by Brit, just agreed to be my first interview. We're going to sit down and talk about moving across the country, both in location and also in environment too, because, well, as most people know, our friend Brit went from California and deep into Los Angeles as well to Georgia in, well, basically, I mean, compared to where she was at, out in the country. So I want to talk to her about the experience, what she had to go through, and what was going on with that. And of course, the diesel truck going by with no exhaust. That's kind of cool. And let's get into it. Let's get started. We're going to start today with, as we always do, with our finance. What's going to affect everybody's finances as we go. So let's start here with the Dow. The Dow sitting at 34,946.39 points. That is a major downfall of the day today, spending the entire day down, steadily down, 361.24 points down, losing a full percent on the day for the Dow. So the markets are really spooked by something. We'll be talking about what the analysts believe that is in just a moment. Your Bitcoin is also, that took a tumble, but I mean not as steadily as the tumble throughout the day today. 29,174 US dollars and 30 US cents is what your current Bitcoin is sitting at. That is down 231 US dollars and 10 US cents, or about 0.75% down on the day, with the majority of the drop coming just after 6 p.m. after it dropped like a rock and then tried to climb its way back up before getting to the point where we are at right now. So those of you who have Bitcoin, you lost a little bit on the day today. Looking at the gas prices in Madison, we're still at a fairly wide divide across the west and east sides of Madison. Of course, remember, these do not reflect your local gas prices. Check your local listings, but out on the east side of Madison, we're sitting at $3.40, and out on the west side, well, unless you're like running out of gas, I'm not 100% sure why anybody's buying gas on the west side right now, because that's still sitting out at $3.70. So reprieve hopefully is coming for everybody else's stations as we go through the trading day and see what happens with that. But that is what your gas prices look like on the day today. Our finance article today comes from CNBC. Dow slides more than 300 points, breaking a 3-day win streak as bank names tumble, from Ha-Kyung Kim and Samantha Subin. Stocks fell Tuesday as concerns over the state of the global economy, China in particular, and a decline of U.S. banks combined to pressure Wall Street. The Dow slid 361.24 points, or 1.02%, ending at 34,946.39 and breaking a 3-day positive streak. The S&P pulled back by 1.16, closing at 44,3786 and ending the session below its 50-day moving average. A move that may signal the beginning of a downtrend. The Nasdaq fell 1.14% to 13,631.05. Financials in the U.S. weakened on Tuesday. Shares of J.P. Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo dropped 2%. Bank of America dropped 3%. The action came after Fitch warned it may have to downgrade the credit rating of dozens of banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase. Last week, Moody's lowered its rating on 10 U.S. banks while putting other big institutions on a watch list for potential downgrades. Regional banks also traded lower on Tuesday, with the SPDR S&P Regional Banking ETF trading down about 3%. Shares fell after Minneapolis Federal Reserve President Neil Kashkari spoke in favor of significant further capital regulation. Right now, it seems that things are quite stable, Kashkari said on a Tuesday town hall meeting. The risk is that if inflation is not completely under control, and that we have to raise rates further from here to bring it down, then they might face more losses than they currently face today, and these pressures could flare up again in the future. Investor sentiment also weakened globally after China reported disappointing economic data, and its central bank made a surprising rate cut. Industrial production in China increased by 3.7% in July from the year earlier period, missing expectations. Retail sales also grew less than expected, and the People's Bank of China lowered its interest rates by 15 basis points to 2.5% from 2.65%, but that failed to soothe investor concerns, and instead only heightened concern about China's struggling real estate market, plus the fact that they're trying to manipulate their currency, but hey, we won't put that on a CNBC article. The China trade this year has been about trying to front-run government policy and government stimulus. But at some point, you just stop believing. Which makes you a big disappointment to Journey, by the way. That policymakers will succeed at boosting economic growth, said Scott Ladner, Chief Investment Officer at Horizon Investments. It seems like there's an effort. It seems like there's the sort of conclusion that the market is beginning to come to yet again for probably the third time this year that the Chinese government is unlikely to stimulate in a way that's meaningful, Ladner said. They never do. I've been watching China for 7 years. They never stimulate in a meaningful way. A packed earnings week for the largest retailer kicked into gear Tuesday. Home Depot reported earnings per share and revenue that beat analyst expectations, pushing its stock slightly higher. Later in the week, traders will parse releases from Target and Walmart. Wow, hey man, I can talk like Joe Biden already this early in the stream, man. Hey, come on, man. But that is what we see coming off our markets for the day. Our layoffs report today. Coming out of the state of Florida, Thermo Fisher lays off 200 plus at clinical stage. Cell and gene therapy factory in Florida from Fraser, Kansas. Wait. People are actually named Fraser? That's a real thing? I thought that was just a character that was made up for Cheers. And then to get its own spin-off series. Yeah, Indictment 5 I think is coming soon, Grant. I think you're right. Thank you, Grant. As layoffs continue to roil the biotech industry, bigger drug makers and manufacturers such as Bristol Myers Squibb and Emergent Biosolutions haven't been immune. Now Thermo Fisher Scientific is among the latest to plot hundreds of jobs cuts. Thermo Fisher, not Thermo Kingfisher, this is not a refrigeration company, is laying off 205 staffers across 2 separate sites in Alachua, Florida. According to a recent worker adjustment and retraining notification alert from the state, the layoff round is set to go into effect from October 9th through end of next March. We believe that leveraging our global network to provide multiple capabilities, including process development, analytical development, and clinical and commercial cGMP manufacturing in one location, will help our customers deliver gene therapies to market faster, a Thermo Fisher spokesperson explained over email. Therefore, as part of our viral services strategy, we're relocating the development, manufacture, and production activities that we currently perform in Alachua to our new Plainville, Massachusetts site. Why the hell would you move from tax-friendly Florida to overly burdened and, overly government overreached Taxachusetts? That seems like a stupid idea. The spokesperson continued. Our science and technology innovation work will remain in Alachua, and we will continue to offer viral vector services at our sites in Cambridge, Lexington, and Plainville, Massachusetts, as well as Senef and Gosselies, Belgium. And we're at a point, by the way, taxable and government overreach stage where Belgium is preferable to Massachusetts. But there's your layoff report. 205 staffers across Alachua, Florida. No indication on whether or not this is HR, middle management, or if this is actual engineers or factory workers on the floor. But they're losing 205 jobs in the state of Florida. So that is what we see for that. And let's talk about what's going on in the rest of the world. Some more finance news for us. Argentina devalues its currency, jacks up interest rates after shock far-right primary win. From Natasha Turak. Smells like gain. That fresh indictment smell, says Mogwai. It's not really a fresh indictment smell, though. I mean, we're at a point where it's... like I said in the cold open, this is the straight-to-video version of the indictment, I think. Argentina's central bank devalued its currency, the peso, by close to 18% and hiked its benchmark interest rate by a whopping 21 percentage points to 118% on Monday following a shock primary election win by far-right libertarian Javier Milei. I'm just going to leave the far-right libertarian thing alone for now. The moves were a bid by the government to calm markets in the wake of the Argentinian congressman's surprise victory, which gave him the largest share of the voters in the country's presidential primary election at roughly 30%, far exceeding forecasts. Markets have been betting on favorable results for moderate candidates. Argentina's presidential election will be held in October. Argentinian stocks and its sovereign dollar bonds were also lower on Monday. The central bank said Monday that the peso would be held at $3.50 to the dollar until the October vote. Milei, riding on a wave of popular discontent, has vowed to get rid of the central bank and dollarize Argentina's economy. He's also advocated for sharp spending cuts. Dude, if you want to pin your economy to our dollar, that may say more about policy for you than anything else. Latin America's third largest economy, Argentina, has been mired in economic and financial crisis for years. The country's foreign reserves are shrinking fast, and its inflation is forecast at 142.4% for the year. Argentina is on the brink of its sixth recession in a decade. Milei is a vocal critic of what he calls the corrupt political class, saying the country's leaders have thrown it from one crisis to another. He believes replacing the peso with the dollar could calm inflation, but many economists warn that it will trigger financial chaos. Oh, it will. Any change is going to do that. But there you go, 118% interest rates in that country. But the Associated Press could not help themselves but get in and even make this financial crisis all about the Donald. Indictment NATO for... Nice. Mogwai says, lay them all off and let God sort it out. You might have to. You start laying them all off. The Argentine peso plunges after rightist who admires Trump comes first in the primary vote. From Daniel Politi. The Argentine peso plunged Monday after an anti-establishment candidate who admires former President Donald Trump came in first in the primary elections that will help determine the country's next president. Javier Milei rocked Argentina's political establishment by receiving the biggest share of primary votes for a presidential candidate in the October general election to decide who leads the nation battered by economic woes. Well, typically when your population goes to somebody who is that anti-establishment, it kind of means that your establishment fucking blows. I would think. He says that Argentina's central bank should be abolished. Based. He said that climate change is a lie. Based. And has characterized sex education as a ploy to destroy the family. Based. He's also said that the sale of human organs should be legal. I have hang-ups about that one. In theory, I would say yes, because I don't like the fact that the government gets involved in crap. But you're going to see some very interesting people do some very, very interesting things if you make that legal. Gun ownership is severely restricted in Argentina. Milei proposes the deregulation of the legal market for weapons and the protection of its legitimate and responsible use by the citizens, according to his party's electoral platform. Yeah, and if he gets into office and does that, the moment that he does, Mysteriously, there's going to be shooting after shooting. Odd. But I just love the fact that because they're doing this, they have to go tie this dude to Trump. Which he might. He might be a Trump person, but the fact that that's the first place that they go, that's sad. Alright, in the student loan avenue of things, federal judge tosses suit against Biden student loan forgiveness plan for long-term borrowers. From Lauren Sforza. A federal judge dismissed a lawsuit brought by two conservative groups intended to halt the Biden admin's plan to cancel $39 billion in student loans for more than 800,000 borrowers. In an order issued on Monday, U.S. District Judge Thomas Ludington of the Eastern District of Michigan dismissed the lawsuit without prejudice, arguing that the groups did not have the standing for their complaint. Ludington said that the groups' alleged injuries were not sufficient. But even assuming the plaintiff's alleged injury was sufficient, they have not adequately demonstrated a causal link between defendants' actions and an identifiable injury, the judge wrote in an 18-page order. The complaint, which was filed by the New Civil Liberties Alliance on behalf of the Mackinac Center for Public Policy and the Cato Institute earlier this month, argued that the admin overstepped its power when it announced the forgiveness in July. The lawsuit came just weeks after the Supreme Court struck down a broader cancellation plan for the student loan pushed by President Biden. The district court did not rule on the merits of the case and instead said Cato and Mackinac were not the right parties to bring it. Shangley, litigation counsel for the New Civil Liberties Alliance, said in a statement to The Hill, "We disagree with the court's conclusion regarding legal standing. We are reviewing legal options with our clients." So this is actually probably going to come back. But in the meantime, the Biden admin is going to start hurrying up and let's get as much of this canceled as we can so we can buy as many votes as we can. So that is going to be what is on this. And yes, this is going to affect your pocketbook, definitely. And this is going to affect our inflationary spending as well. So pay attention for that as we go. It's too bad we don't have a House of Representatives that can actually step in and say, hey, no, dickbag, we control the power of the purse here. Wouldn't that be nice? Grant says, not surprised the Cato Institute loses. They're very good at losing. You get no argument from me on that one. All right, I wanted to, before we got into some of the heavy stuff here today, I wanted to talk about this. I have said things about Ron Johnson. I do not care for Ron Johnson, but when he is right, I give him the credit. And Ron Johnson coming out here talking about Eisenhower's 15-minute long farewell address, which you should all listen to the entire address. I have listened to the entire address numerous times, but he's got 4 clips here highlighted that I want to talk about here for just a moment. Here are 4 clips of what he warned us about that have all come true. Amazingly prescient.
May prosper together.
Okay, before we do this, let me actually read the caption. This is probably the more famous one when he talks about the military-industrial complex, but Ron Johnson says, warning, the grave implications of the rise of the military-industrial complex result endless wars and misery. Which, by the way, coming from a Republican, and before I conclude this, number one, somebody should bookmark this for Ron Johnson, because as soon as it becomes popular and a big standing issue in the Republican Party to go back to war, Ron Johnson is going to give up on this entirely and go right back into the warmongering camp. Ron Johnson does not have a political standing. He goes into whatever faction is the most powerful in the Republican Party. And he always has. But let's listen first to this one, 2 minute 20-second clip of Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Or degree constantly arise. Of these I mention 2 only. A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations.
Where's the lie?
Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
I am not going to hit the treasure chest on D-Live only because there are only 5.4 lemons in there. Like, I went to go pop it and there's like nothing there. My D-Live viewership has actually been pretty low lately. I get most of my viewership from Twitch and then second most from YouTube. So, as Grant pointed out, the second one, the dangers of scientific and technological elite driving public policy. Result, the Pinko Pox cartel censoring the truth and sabotaging early treatment. Let's listen.
Akin to and largely responsible for the sweeping changes in our industrial military posture has been the technological revolution during recent decades. In this revolution, research has become central. It also becomes more formalized, complex, and costly. A steadily increasing share is conducted for, by, or at the direction of the federal government. Today, the solitary inventor, tinkering in his shop, has been overshadowed by task forces of scientists in laboratories and testing fields. In the same fashion, the free university, historically the fountainhead of free ideas and scientific discovery, has experienced a revolution in the conduct of research. Partly because of the huge costs involved, a government contract becomes virtually a substitute for intellectual curiosity. For every old blackboard, there are now hundreds of new electronic computers.
Man, if you could only see that
now. The
now.
prospect of domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money is ever present and is gravely to be regarded. Yet in holding scientific research and discovery in respect, as we should, we must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. It is the task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and to integrate these and other forces, new and old, within the principles of our democratic system, ever aiming toward the supreme goals of our free society.
That is chilling, too. And, I mean, look at what happened during the Pinko Pox, where, you know, if you disagreed with the science, you hated grandma, and you were to be held in contempt and othered. Is there a crystal ball behind this desk? Is that what Ike is seeing? We've got the shorter clip here. We shouldn't live for today, plundering and mortgaging our children's future. Result, $1.62 trillion deficit. Oh, but I lowered it, man. Come on. In the first 10 months of fiscal year 2023, almost $33 trillion in total debt with no end in sight and a capless system right now, so they can just run up however much they want. Another factor in
maintaining balance involves the element of time. As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow. We cannot mortgage the material assets of our grandchildren without risking the loss also of their political and spiritual heritage. We want democracy to survive for all generations to come, not to become the insolvent phantom of tomorrow. Another factor in maintaining balance involves the element of time.
And again, where we see this now, and I mean, this went all the way back to when I was a kid too. Like, there was a lot of talk when I was a kid of, do it feels good, just do it. I mean, that was the name of one of the biggest commercial brands out there. Just do it. Which I think there are few girls around in most of our high schools that took that way too literally, but I digress on that. But I mean, that does kind of go down into where I was going with that. I mean, what is the key argument with the abortion argument? It's like they tried to gaslight you and say rape and incest and 12-year-old should have to carry her dad's baby or something like that. But in reality, the key argument to this is I can go out and make it feel good and then deal with the consequences at the abortion clinic afterwards. Moloch be pleased. With nobody innovating, and again, there's just no self-control to it like it was in our parents' generation. It was starting to twist at the end of Gen X, but I mean, the baby boomers, even with all their free love, had some level of impulse control, not as much as Gen X did, but... And lastly, from Ike, we shouldn't allow global society to fall into a state of dreadful fear and hate. Result, scientific elites scare us. With climate and COVID alarmism, political elites exacerbate division by pushing hate and fear. Let's listen.
During the long lane of the history yet to be written, America knows that this world of ours, ever growing smaller, must avoid becoming a community of dreadful fear and hate, and be instead a proud confederation of mutual trust and respect. Such a confederation must be one of equals. The weakest must come to the conference table with the same confidence as do we, protected as we are by our moral, economic, and military strength. That table, though scarred by many past frustrations, cannot be abandoned for the certainty agony of disarmament of the battlefield. Disarmament with mutual honor and confidence is a continuing imperative. Together we must learn how to compose differences, not with arms, but with intellect and decent purpose. During the long lane of the history yet to be written.
And realistic, this, by the way, is something I've observed, and we'll talk about this more when we get down and talk about Indictment 4 electric, well, not electric boogaloo anymore, Indictment 4 straight to video. And that is the fact that I do think that there is a level of the elites that are trying to push MAGA to go out and do something stupid. They're trying to push them into the wall so they come back out and, hey, let's go take back the Capitol. Let's go insurrect. Let's go do something. Because, once you can pull the military in and hit the crackdown, then you see martial law and, by the way, gun confiscation, asset confiscation, to the likes of which the Western world has never seen before. Even in places like Venezuela. And you can write off the entire other political party as even possibly illegal. Because they were the ones who started the, as Tim Pool likes to say, the Civil War! I'm going to get a beanie just to put on Just for when I say Civil War. So,
Akin,
thank you,
but threats,
Ike.
new in kind or degree,
We'll mute that back down here. Thank you, Ike, for those words of wisdom. And thank you, Ron Johnson, for bringing those to the fore and letting us talk about them. All right. From Goodhue, Minnesota, which, by the way, is not that far away from here. It's a little bit of a haul from here, but it's not far from where I grew up, which is a touch of a haul from here, I guess. But I know this city. I've been to this city. I know people who live in this city who now have no police, which is, by the way, based. But I know that not everybody can survive without police force either. Reading from the Daily Mail, Goodhue, Minnesota's entire police department quits over pay dispute, blindsiding mayor and small town's 1,300 residents. From Will Potter for DailyMail.com. The small town of Goodhue, Minnesota is set to be left without a police force after the entire department resigned in protest when the chief left his post over poor pay. Goodhue Mayor Ellen Anderson Buck said she was blindsided by the move on Monday, and the tiny community of just 1,300 said they were floored by the decision. The police chief, Josh Smith, said there was no end in sight, as he hasn't had a single applicant fill the vacancies. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't know anybody who isn't already in the police force in Goodhue that would want to apply. After his resignation, the town's only full-time officer and 5 part-time officers resigned as well. He previously lamented the poor pay offered to the officers, which stood at $22 an hour in Goodhue, as he warned the town city council that there's nobody getting into the game. If you want to keep the police department, and this is something that we want to continue going with, something needs to change dramatically and drastically, and it's going to happen now, he said. The mass resignation came after a Goodhue council meeting on Monday evening in discussion over police pay increases. The resignations were accepted in the meeting, with the whole force set to leave by August 24th. Smith had signaled he was intent on resigning weeks earlier when he told officials he couldn't find any new recruits and was losing prospects to big cities, where they actually would get paid. But of course, in big cities where they also have to work. And just a reminder, with Goodhue, and I can pull the map if you want to, but with Goodhue, you're right by the Twin Cities. You are right by Rochester. And you're close enough for a commute and a possible move while still being able to see family to Winona. We'll get the map in just a second. He told the city council he'd personally been offered a job in a city, and his own efforts to find more officers for Goodhue fell on deaf ears. I've called every PD around for the youngest guys out there getting into the game, and there's nobody getting into the game, he said. When Smith resigned, it was a decision that prompted the town's only full-time officer, Anthony Brecht, and 5 part-time officers to follow suit. So, in realism, Goodhue is, I can't remember my Minnesota county lines. This was on the Wisconsin side. I would know this in a heartbeat. But the Leftopedia will actually probably tell us what county it's in. So I can look at that while we're also looking to get the map. Leftopedia is in Goodhue County. That's right. I should have known that. I guess I forgot there was a Goodhue County. I thought it was a part of Rochester County, actually. But let's get the map up here so we can see what's happening and where this is, in case somebody would like to live where there are no police. Although you'd have to pay Minnesota taxes, so do keep that in mind. But, there's Goodhue. So right there's the cities, within 20 miles to the city limits of the the metro area of the Twin Cities, I should say. Rochester, which is considered to be a big city where the Mayo Clinic is about 20 miles away. Maybe Rochester might be closer to 25, or Winona probably 30 miles away. So you're in between, and Owatonna is a relatively big city. Not really a big city, but relatively big city. So, I mean, right here, we've got 1, 2, 3 places where you're still close to family, and you can come in and do your thing, and go to work every day, and get a way better paycheck because there's a way better taxation system. Ooh, taxation. And not worry about the strife of small town. And I mean, even if you were to cut to the other side of the river, and you did want to even take a little bit of a haul, you've got Menominee Eau Claire right there. So definitely some place to move back up. So I can't see. Now, the Goodhue County Sheriff's Department will probably take over the vast majority of the day-to-day policing, the domestic disputes, the welfare checks, and things like that. And yes, the traffic stops. They'll come in and take care of all that. Like, around this area, and again, I remind you, and I won't tell you where, but this is the area that I grew up in. There are actually quite a few small towns around here that don't have a police force, and their respective counties are the ones who do the policing for the small area, just because they're too small to have a dedicated police force. But yes, Goodhue County has no more police. I'm sorry, Goodhue City has no more police. Goodhue County still has police, but Goodhue City has no more police. Alright, a story that came into the chat yesterday, with some F's in the chat as well, from Fox Weather. Multiple dogs die after flash flooding hits DC doggy daycare. Poor doggos. From Heather Brinkman. Officials say multiple dogs have died from flash flooding at a doggy daycare in Washington, D.C. How do you tell the family that, by the way? Yeah, we're sorry, we just couldn't control the weather around us, and we didn't have the proper safeguards in place, and we lost your dog. DC Fire and Rescue were called to Rhode Island Avenue after severe storms produced flash flooding. 6 feet of water was said to have filled the area, where crews worked to pull those stuck inside their cars and businesses. Fire Chief John Donnelly said that 20 dogs and all employees inside were rescued from district dogs after a wall collapsed due to the excessive flooding. While some are being assessed for injuries, he said no person or animal needed to be transported for additional care. Chief Donnelly could not confirm the number of dogs killed, as the daycare is working to contact families of those who lost their pets. Like, there had to have been some other damage. Dogs swim, dude. And they swim pretty well. This incident comes after the same area flooded during heavy rain events. This same doggy daycare flooded last year, resulting in water entering the business. A manager at District Dogs talked to Fox Weather last year, saying the flooding events continue to happen. It's terrifying to know when these events happen. There's little we can do, said Jillian Keene, district manager at District Dogs. And while city officials have pledged to take action, the changes can't come soon enough. Now, I don't know if this is in a historic building where the city has to come back in and takes it, but I mean, at some point, if you own your business and your property, wouldn't you think to yourself, hey, can I shore up my building somehow? I mean, this is my investment. DC Water posted on X, the company formerly known as Twitter, Monday about the mounting frustration about the upcoming project that he hopes to help with flooding. The Northeast Boundary Tunnel is slated to open within the next 2 weeks. That will help mitigate the risk of flooding, but not eliminate it, DC Water said. So, Poor doggos. Alright, let's talk about this one, which is interesting on electioneering prospects. GOP sees turnout disaster without Trump, which, by the way, is something that I have been warning about since, like, February. From Alexander Bolton. Republican strategists are worried that if former President Trump doesn't secure the GOP's presidential nomination next year, or if he's kept off the ballot because of his mounting legal problems, it could spell a voter turnout disaster for their party in 2024. GOP strategists say there's growing concern that if Trump is not the nominee, many of his core supporters, who are estimated to make up 25% to 35% of the party's base, will take their ball and go home. The conventional wisdom is there's concern that if Trump is not the nominee, his coalition will take their ball and go home, said Matt Dole, a Republican strategist based in Ohio, where Republicans are targeting vulnerable Democrat Senator Sherrod Brown. Folks are interested in how that plays out, and so I think right now they would be happy if Trump is the nominee. In Ohio, it's not true across the country because then his coalition will turn out in November, he said. A Pew Research Center analysis of the 2022 midterm elections, published last month, found that higher turnout among Trump voters last year was a key factor behind Republicans winning control of the House. The analysis found 71% of voters who backed Trump participated in the midterm election, compared to 67% of voters who supported Biden. Brian Darling, a Republican strategist and former Senate aide, said there would be significant political fallout for Republicans if federal and local criminal prosecutions derail Trump's path to nomination. If somehow he's not the nominee, it will hurt turnout, he said. He's got a unique coalition. He brings a lot of non-traditional voters to the Republican Party. That's it, right there. That is the point that they need to be focusing on when they do this. And it will be difficult to win a state like Ohio and other Midwestern states if you lose all the Trump voters or make them disaffected voters and they don't even show up. That is the problem right there. It's the fact that, and I have said this, I have been saying this for months and months on end, since Ron DeSantis started flirting with the idea of not waiting out until 2028, which is about the stupidest thing he's ever done. And he's risked his own ability to maintain in Florida at this point, just because of the way that he did things with Trump. But when I look at something like this, when I talk about what's going on here, and when I say disaffected Trump voters, and Trump voters are not traditional Republicans, just like they said this, I have pointed out on numerous occasions, the core of MAGA is disaffected Democrats from the union wing of the party, whose party got taken over by the elites, by the hugely college educated, by the people who look down their nose on blue-collar workers, who think that those jobs are never coming back and they should just go out and learn to do that thing that I can't say on YouTube. That is the core of MAGA. It's not more racism. It's not more white supremacy. And by the way, you Democrats are not doing yourselves any favors when you come back out and say, it's the party of the stupid people, because these people used to vote for you religiously. I know many of them. And while I saw the light pretty quickly in my life, turning 18 in 02 and by 08 realizing, well, 07, that the fix was in and this was all going to the progressives and the elites, when I read Barack Obama's primary strategy and his primary agenda, there were enough people who didn't realize it in 2007 and then shifted on once they got crapped on over and over again from 08 to 2016. That the Democrat Party had nothing for them. And they show it, by the way, again, over and over again. Democrats could have their 1,000-year Reich if they open their arms to the blue-collar voters and say, hey, we'll do whatever it takes to come back out and get you. Instead of just saying, hey, you're evil turncoats and Trump. Well, they won't They won't admit to the fact that these people are ex-Democrats, but they'll just call them racist, white supremacists, cult members, Cult 45. But while there was an appetite for curbing abortion among the MAGA Republicans, which is part of the reason that it happened, there is no appetite to turn the entire world into a theocracy, like DeSantis tried to run on at first, to try to secure the evangelical vote and try to pull it back away from Trump. There's no appetite for that, especially among that core base that will not come back in and go to an establishment candidate like Ron DeSantis. Especially, this is the frustrating part, especially when all of DeSantis' voters do nothing but come out and say, hey, you Trump supporters are nothing but toothless hicks. You're not even real Republicans. That's the point. They're independents who happen to align with a Republican candidate right now. And yes, between the insults that are coming from the DeSantis camp, who refuses to try to court these voters, and the fact of who DeSantis is and the way that he tried to run at first, yeah, no, these people are not going to come out and vote for you. They're going to stay home and give you the finger, just like they did to Hillary Clinton. By the way, here's one of these elites and one of these DeSantis people who does want to come back out and basically do what I just said that the elites want to do here. Steve Krakauer says, he sucked the soul out of the Republican Party. He's taken everything from us. And it's our turn to take it back, former GOP Georgia Lieutenant Governor. Our turn is the position of the anti-Trump Republican today ahead of 24, the ones cheering for the indictments, which this gentleman clearly is. Let's listen.
This feels different. You know what? Donald Trump did his most damage in Georgia. He sucked the soul out of the Republican Party here. He sucked the morality out of the Republican Party, the fiscal responsibility out of the Republican Party. He sucked our winning percentage out of the Republican Party. He's taken everything from us, and it is our turn to take it back, right? It's our turn to win elections based on the policies that we think we're better on. This is the prime spot for us to take Joe Biden.
That, by the way, it's our turn. That is the absolute worthless entitlement that put the final nail in the coffin of Hillary Clinton's campaign. It was her turn. It's like these people can't see more than 5 minutes behind them. But if I know anything about the GOP, especially under the auspices of people like Paul Ryan and Ron DeSantis and George W. Bush and John McCain and Mitt Romney and all the other people, is that they love to lose. So long as they get their little crumbs from the Democrat Party for losing like good little boys.
Into the woodshed and call them out for not running the border right, not protecting our communities, not putting our best foot forward internationally. These are our moments in time. But if we make this about the three-ring circus of Donald Trump, we will lose, and lose again.
You make a good point that
this feels different.
It's like Lindsey Graham got the Mogwai's phone again. Sugar, I sucked a lot of souls in South Carolina. There's one thing I'm good at. It's sucking. Well, both in the figurative and probably the literal sense for Lindsey Graham. By the way, I want to go back to a chat that I missed earlier too. Also from the Mogwai, who said, when we were listening to the military-industrial complex speech, Mogwai said, anyone else have the MASH theme playing in their head right now, or is it just me? I don't have the MASH theme playing in my head right now, but I do have the theme for the No Gimmicks podcast in my head because Brady uses a clip of that speech in the intro to the No Gimmicks podcast. So, by the way, and again, these people clearly learn nothing. I do want to clarify, like, if I do pull some leftoid voter or some DeSantis voter into this, I want to clarify, I do not want Donald Trump to be the president. I know a lot of my regular viewers and the people who especially catch up on the after effect do. I do not, because I am a fiscal hawk, and that was the biggest problem that I had at the end of the 2016 term, coming up into 2020, was the fact that he signed so many omnibus packages. But I can at least look back on history and see where the problems were with the party, capital T, capital P, and why they kept screwing everything up. People like this can't. Or they willfully won't, one of the two. Alright, let's look at this one here. I think this is the last... Nope, we got just a couple more stories before we get into the Trump stuff. So, an update on the Craig Robertson story. Trump supporter shot and killed during an FBI raid was pointing a .357 Magnum at feds. Yeah, I'm sure. From Jorge Fitzgibbon. And even if he was, I mean, you busted it through his door at 6 o'clock in the morning. Yes, you shouted and announced, but still, you busted into somebody's door where he's taking care of a disabled kid at 6 o'clock in the morning. And somebody who's not just going to be able to run away and retreat. Even if he did, I don't blame him. The staunch Trump supporter, gunned down by federal agents during a raid in his Utah home last week, was brandishing a .357 Magnum when he was fatally shot, the FBI said on Monday. Was it, "Hey, coppers, come and get me," or was it, okay, don't shoot"? Because I got this feeling, given his stature, and given the fact that most of the stuff he was doing was keyboard warrioring, I'm going to say it was probably the latter. Oh, it's over his head. He's brandishing. Craig Robertson, 75, was armed with a revolver when confronted by federal agents trying to execute a search warrant. On Wednesday, after his alleged assassination threats against President Biden and other top Democrats, the FBI said in a statement. Robertson resisted arrest as agents attempted to take him into custody. He pointed a .357 revolver at them. The statement said, read the statement, according to the Deseret News. The FBI officers take all shooting incidents involving our agents' task force officers seriously, the statement continued. Good, release the body cam then. You can clear all this up in a second if you just release the body cam, which, of course, it's a federal agency, so they're not required to have. In accordance with FBI policy, the shooting incident is under review by the FBI's Inspection Division, which means, of course, we investigated ourselves and found that we did nothing wrong. We have no further details to provide at this time. There is just somehow I don't believe that. I don't. But again, you know, you could clear this all up in a second. You just release that body cam. Three military branches without Senate-confirmed leaders for the first time in history, Defense Secretary says. Based from Eleanor Watson over at CBS. The Navy on Monday joined the Army and Marine Corps in operating without Senate-confirmed military leaders because of Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville's hold on top military nominations. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Michael Gilday, in a ceremony Monday, relinquished his office as required by statute, and Admiral Lisa Franchetti took over in an acting capacity. It's the first time in the history of the Defense Department that the three military services are without a Senate-confirmed leader, according to Lloyd Austin. Well, don't worry, you can still put your own pick in there, and I mean, it's not like they're going without leadership. This is unprecedented, and it's unnecessary, and it's unsafe, and this sweeping hold is undermining America's military readiness, Austin said at remarks on Monday's ceremony. Well, again, there is an acting admiral in the Navy. You can put your mind at ease. And don't worry, you can also still sail the 7 seas. The Vice Service Chiefs for the Navy, Army, and Marine Corps are now leading each representative service in an acting capacity and continuing certain responsibilities of their current role. All 3 of the Vice Chiefs have been nominated by President Biden for top positions, including Franchetti, who would be the first ever female member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff if the Senate confirms her. Their nominations are part of approximately 300 military nominations held up in the Senate. Tuberville has put a blanket hold on top military nominations to protest the Defense Department's policy that grants leave and reimburses travel costs for service members to seek reproductive care, including abortions. Tuberville said that he will keep the hold on the Defense Department until the Defense Department rescinds the policy or Congress passes it into law. The Defense Department estimates that hold could impact more than 650 military nominations by the end of the year. The hold affects those 650 officers plus the officers that are replacing and filling in behind them and their families. Mark Milley told Congress in May he thinks 3,000 to 4,000 lives in total will be directly impacted by the end of the year if the hold continues. Good. I have no problem with this. Some of that is because I live in a country that has a firearm behind every blade of grass. As much as the Democrat Party doesn't want us to have that, I know that there is nobody stupid enough in this world to try to do a direct land assault on this country. They do cowardly things like hijack airplanes and fly them into buildings. And mostly right now, all this is doing is holding up, with the exception of shipping lanes around the world, this is mostly holding up military adventurism by the Uniparty. Alright, 2 more. From the Post-Millennial, Hawaii governor says state is looking to acquire land that was destroyed in fires because of course they were. He has also announced a moratorium on any out-of-state property sales because of course he did. On Monday, Hawaiian Governor Josh Green announced that his admin was considering acquiring properties in the seaside resort town of Lahaina that had been destroyed by the recent wildfires. He vowed to prevent foreign buyers from swooping in to exploit the tragedy, instead exploiting the tragedy himself, suggesting the state was better suited to take control of the land because, of course, he did. I'm already thinking of ways for the state to acquire the land so we can put it into the workforce housing and put it back into the families or make open spaces in perpetuity as a memorial to the people who were lost, Green said while standing amongst the rubble. Also, in the same process, driving up property values in the rest of your 5-island chain. We want this to be something we remember after the pain passes as the magical place. Lahaina will rebuild. The tragedy right now is the loss of life. The buildings can be rebuilt over time. Even the banyan tree may survive, but we don't want this to become a clear space where people from overseas just come in and decide they're going to take it. The state will take it and preserve it first. In a separate press conference, Green reiterated the commitment to ensure the land was protected for residents and revealed that he had spoken with the Hawaiian Attorney General regarding options to do a moratorium on any sales of property that have been damaged or destroyed. It's going to be a very long time before any growth or housing can be built, so you'll be pretty poorly informed if you try to steal land from our people and then build there, he said, adding, I will try to allow no one from outside our state to buy any land until we get through this crisis and decide what Lahaina should be in the future. Boy, this sounds more and more like they did this on purpose. We've cleared out a bunch of the people, we've taken away a bunch of the land that people can develop on, and we're telling them it's going to be a very long time before anybody can develop again, in spite of the fact that I've seen houses, and I understand it's a smaller fire, but I've seen houses on the foundation where the old house burned to the ground within months. So, this makes me have questions. And the last one, before we do the Trump stuff. A Montana judge hands young plaintiffs a significant victory in a landmark climate trial, From Ellen Nielsen over at CNN. Of course, the one leading the charge has blue hair. Why wouldn't she? A Montana judge handed a significant victory on Monday to more than a dozen young plaintiffs in the nation's first constitutional climate trial. As extreme weather becomes more deadly and scientists warn the climate crisis is eroding our environment and our natural resources. In a case that could have legal reverberations for other climate litigation, District Court Judge KTZed ruled that Montana's continued development of fossil fuels violates a clause in its state constitution that guarantees its citizens the right to a clean and healthy environment. Montana is one of several states that have explicit environmental guarantees written into their state constitution. While Seeley's ruling won't prevent mining or burning fossil fuels in the state, it will reverse a recently passed state law that prohibits state agencies from considering planet warming, pollution, when permitting fossil fuel projects. It's also a landmark win for young climate advocates who are turning more to the courts for judgments on the cause and impacts of the climate crisis. Plaintiffs have a fundamental constitutional right to a clean and healthful environment, which includes climate as part of the environment's life support system, Seeley wrote in her order. Ricky Held, one of the plaintiffs, told CNN's Jake Tapper, on the lead, the outcome was a long time coming and she was very excited. Well, until the electric bill. Well, she doesn't pay an electric bill, her parents do. Until she fills up the car. Oh no, she's not going to do that either. Getting a ruling that listens to our stories and our voices and the best available science is just really important, she said. Attorneys for the plaintiffs called the court's decision a sweeping win in a statement. Yeah, and the rest of us lost, so thank you for that. Today, for the first time in U.S. history, a court ruled on the merits of a case that the government violated the constitutional rights of children through laws and actions that promote fossil fuels, ignore climate change, and disproportionately imperil young people, said Julia Olson, Chief Legal Counsel and Executive Director of Our Children's Trust. This is a huge win for Montana, for youth, for democracy, and for our climate. More rulings like this will certainly come. And I'm afraid to say it, but she's right. More rulings like this are going to come. Even Obama understood the drill baby drill idea. But this administration is dead set on killing the lifeblood of our economy and the lifeblood of the economy of the world. So, strap yourselves in. Alright, I put it off long enough. We gotta talk about Donald Trump. And the fourth indictment. Indictment 4 is here, you guys. So, let's get down into it. NPC News reporting. First off, Trump and 18 co-defendants charged with racketeering in Georgia 2020 election probe. From Blaine Alexander, Charlie Guile, Catherine Doyle, and Dara Gregorian. Former President Trump and top allies, including his lawyer, Giuliani, and his former White House Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, and a top former Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark, were indicted on Monday on felony charges in connection with efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election results in Georgia. The sweeping 41-count indictment also names lawyers John Eastman, Sidney Powell, Kenneth Chesborough, Jen Ellis, and Ray Smith, along with several others. They were all charged with violating Georgia's RICO, Racketeer, Influence, and Corrupt Organization Act. In an indictment handed to the judge around 9 p.m., this was last night, by the way, very shortly after we got off the air for Contemporary, and made public just before 11 p.m., Trump was charged with felony racketeering and numerous conspiracy charges, court filings show. The racketeering charge carries a sentence of 5 to 20 years because, of course, NPC is obsessed with the fact that we got him this time, he's going to prison this time. While conspiracy conviction can result in a minimum sentence of 1 year in prison with a variable maximum sentence. Trump and the other defendants charged in this indictment refused to accept that Trump lost, and they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump, the indictment says. So, I have not read the indictment on this one yet. And yes, I know, cringe. I will be listening to Ben about this later on. but from the way that they're describing the outcome here, or I'm sorry, the indictment here, it suggests to me that the majority of the charges that bring forward also require intent, which require at least one of the people on there to be able to come out and say point blank, I know we lost the election, let's change it anyway. Yes, of course they're using RICO. That way they could charge a bunch of people at once. That's the only reason they're using RICO. The 98-page indictment lays out a number of alleged schemes aimed at achieving that goal, including pressuring state officials to change the results, accessing voting machines and data in rural Coffee County, and harassing election workers Ruby Freeman with bogus fraud claims. Trump has denied all wrongdoing, as Giuliani did hours before the indictment was made public. Scott Grubman, the lawyer for Chesebro, said Tuesday his client had been giving the Trump campaign legal advice and stands ready to defend him against these unfounded charges. Eastman attorney Harvey Silverglate, who also said his client was giving legal advice, said he sent a legal memo to Willis's office Monday morning explaining why his client should not be charged. Ellis, meanwhile, tweeted Tuesday morning the Democrats and the Fulton County DA are criminalizing the practice of law. Meadows, Powell, and Smith did not all immediately respond to requests for comment. Fani Willis said the late night news conference that the arrest warrants have been issued for all of the defendants and that each has until August 25th to surrender voluntarily. Willis said she intends to try all 19 defendants together and is aiming to have the case go to trial in the next 6 months. So, a couple things that are going to be different with this case. Number one, this is a state charge, which, as our friends the leftoids have pointed out, and I'm going to get this link into the chats for you guys, which I think you guys over on Rumble, you got to slow down. I mean, nobody's going to be able to read this flying by because you're chatting so fast over on the Rumble side. And I'm also going to put this up in the Discord because it has the indictment there. If you guys want to read the 98-page indictment, it will be made available to you. There we go on NPC News. Let me put a caption here. So they know that's what we're doing here. Midge is trying to get my goat on thinking that I knew things from Maui, which I know I was talking about Goodhue. All right. Willis said she. Let's see. The grand jury's hearing evidence in Willis's investigation into whether Trump and his allies interfered in the 2020 election returned the indictment earlier on Monday night. It's the fourth time Trump has been indicted in the last 4.5 months, and oddly enough, probably not the last time. And the second time he's been charged with trying to interfere with the election in the past 2 weeks. Willis led a sprawling 2-year investigation into whether Trump and his allies coordinated attempts to unlawfully alter the outcomes of the 2020 election. I don't believe that's what happened at all, by the way. It sounds more like she went through everything that was there and figured out how she could come back and spin it so that she could get a slam dunk case. No, they're doing it in 6 months, she says. Well, alright. Let's listen to Fani Willis herself. This is a 23-second clip because, of course, everybody had to go back and cheer this. Brace yourselves, Fani Willis has spoken. The grand jury's thunderous roar has echoed, issuing arrest warrants that pierce the very heart of those charged. Wow, and you think there's actually a writer's strike? Including Trump. But wait, there's a twist in this electrifying tale. The sands of time are ticking away as the defendants are granted a choice. A dance with destiny. Will they heed the call and voluntarily step into the spotlight of justice by high noon on Friday, the 25th day of August, in the year of 2023? puke. Let's listen.
Now to indict Donald Trump. Do you believe you need to be the fourth one to try him, or could you move it up? Do you want to be the first to try him?
I don't have any desire to be first or last. I want to try him and be respectful for our sovereign states. We do want to move this case along, and so we will be asking for a proposed order that occurs a trial date within the next 6 months.
Now to indict Donald Trump. Do you believe you need to be the fourth one to try him, or could you move?
I thought there was going to be applause in that clip. So, I just want to try him. That's all. I don't care about being in the first or the last. Bull crap. So, CNN has this here. Actually, I am not going to go through this here, but they went through the trouble of basically doing the propaganda and telling you why this is the one that's going to get him. They've got him this time. So I actually am going to put this also in the chat for you guys. Let's see, I need this one. Because they've got annotations, they've got cliff notes. I hear the 25th indictment is silver. That could be. We could get there too, by the way. That's a possibility. I don't think it'd get that far. I think people would start to realize that this was a bang up and a hit job. I don't think they can do this too many more times. As much as the leftoids want to come back out and say that every state that was involved should be out and filing their own indictment right now, I don't think they can do this again. Well, I think they can do this again, but I think they've got like 2 more times before even the most ardent leftoids are starting to look at this and saying, are we railroading? Are we the bad guys here? But we will look at the key takeaways because Daily Wire is really good for the TLDRs. Key takeaways from Trump being indicted in expansive Georgia RICO case from Ryan Saavedra. Former President Trump and several of his top allies were indicted in Georgia late Monday night by a Fulton County grand jury over their alleged attempts to overturn the results of the 2020 election. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Wills said the 19 individuals charged under the RICO Act, which allows prosecutors to connect various crimes committed by multiple defendants and argue that they were working together towards a criminal goal, were part of a criminal enterprise. Our full 19 are Trump, Giuliani, Eastman, Meadows, Chesebro, Jeffrey Clark, Jenna Ellis, Ray Stalling Smith III, Robert Shealy, Mike Roman, David Schaefer, Sean Micah Tresher, Still, that dude's got a long name, Stephen Lee, Harrison Floyd, Trevian Kuti, Sidney Powell, Kathleen Latham, Scott Hall, and Misty Hampton. The New York Times, a former newspaper, noted the indictment contains what are effectively several baskets of alleged criminal activity to keep the former president in office, and none of the defendants were involved in all the alleged different schemes, which included making false claims of election fraud at a legislative hearing. That requires intent, by the way. In December 2020, trying to install a slate of fake pro-Trump electors to give Georgia Electoral College votes to Trump. That actually might not hold water because there is evidence of that being done in the past. Trying to steal and tamper with voter data and election equipment, and trying to harass and intimidate election workers. The case can also be broadcast on television, so the public will witness all the evidence that's being presented. The following defendants have until noon on August 25th to turn themselves in. Trump, 13 charges. 3 counts of solicitation, a violation of oath by a public officer. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree. 2 counts of conspiracy to commit false statements and writings. 2 counts of false statements and writings. 1 violation of the RICO Act. 1 count conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer. 1 count conspiracy to commit filing false documents. And 1 count of filing false documents. And we're not going to go through everybody's charges, because that would put us here until midnight. But that is what they're trying to pull with this. CBS with an explanation of what a RICO charge is. Trump faces a RICO charge in Georgia. What is the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act? From Claire Himes. Sugar, the good people of South Carolina support Big Daddy Trump. We would only use handcuffs for fun. Damn it, Graham! Graham, by the way, and one of the things that a lot of the leftoids that are in on this right now are the most angry about is that Lindsey Graham was not pulled in on this. Whether or not he should have been, there's a determination to be made about. But with that, and with what we see with that, one of the things to remember about Lindsey Graham is he's a sitting U.S. Senator right now. So there is a different set of rules regulating whether or not he can be arrested and hauled in. Because typically he would have to be impeached first and made a private citizen before he can be hauled in on a regular charge with this, which I think is highly unlikely at this point. But they're also pulling and trying to get Ginny Thomas in on this as well. The felony charges filed Monday against former President Trump in Georgia are unlike any of the other 78. The grand jury in Fulton County charged Trump and 18 of his allies under a law more commonly known for its use against organized crime, but they won't use it against the government for whatever reason, but has broader applications, the State's Racketeer and Influence Corruption Organizations Act. What are RICO charges in Georgia? Georgia's RICO statute is considered to be more expansive in scope than the federal law from which it is derived in Georgia. Prosecutors are able to point to a range of organized or related attempts to engage in predicate acts or predicate crimes, which include everything from violent crimes, such as murder or arson, to false statements and obstruction of justice. The racketeering statute does not simply look at a single crime, it tries to look at the bigger picture of view, said Morgan Cloud, a law professor at Emory. In order to prove racketeering took place, Cloud said prosecutors must convince a jury, beyond a reasonable doubt, that at least two of the racketeering activities are related in terms of method, purpose, or victims. And in Trump's case, Cloud believes that the most important of those would be related in terms of goal or purpose, which was to overturn the 2020 presidential election in Georgia. It has to be not just one separate isolated event, but a series of interrelated actions, Cloud said. In order to convict under RICO, prosecutors have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that there is an enterprise, which can range from a corporation to an informal group of individuals who undertake criminal actions as part of a shared goal. That's why Trump is not the sole defendant charged for orchestrating the enterprise under the RICO statute, which, by the way, funny story about that, Trump and they charged numerous people on this, because of the fact that they need to have multiple people involved in this in order for RICO to take effect. But they can get multiple people charged with this in a RICO violation against Trump. But we still, like, Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in prison right now for solicitation of sexual favors of minors to nobody. Still to this day. That's why Trump is not the sole defendant charged for orchestrating the enterprise under the RICO statute. Multiple allies, including former attorney Giuliani, the so-called fake elector supporters who signed an illegitimate version of the state's electoral college vote, have also been charged for their roles in the racketeering scheme. So that is what they are trying to link with this in. Unfortunately, that's going to be a very, very big hill to climb. The AP coming in and saying where all the investigations stand. We'll do this one really quickly. The Associated Press, no author given reporting. Trump has now been indicted in a fourth case. The probe by Fannie Wells began shortly after the release of a recording of a January 2nd, 2021 phone call between Trump and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, in which the then president suggested that Raffensperger could find 11,780 votes, just enough to overtake Biden. That's not at all what was in the transcript of that call, but you guys only listened to the 3-minute clip that they passed around the TV, not the full 90-minute phone call like I did. Here's a look at some of the other top probes. Classified documents. Jack Smith has been leading 2 federal probes related to Trump, both of which resulted in charges against the former president. In all, Trump faces 40 felonies in the classified documents case. The most serious charge carries a penalty of up to 20 years. Trial date of May 20th, 2024. The trial will not start until deep into the presidential nominating calendar and probably well after the Republican nominee is clear, though before that person is officially nominated at the RNC. In D.C., Smith's second case was unveiled in August when the former president was indicted on felony charges for working to overturn the results. After a weeks-long campaign of lies about election results, prosecutors alleged that Trump sought to exploit the violence by pointing to it as a reason to further delay the counting of the votes that sealed his defeat. The Trump campaign called the charges fake and asked why it took 2.5 years to bring them, because they had to fabricate them. The hush money case, that one is set to appear in state court on January 4th, before the nominating process begins. And, of course, Letitia James' onerous civil cases as well. So that is where everything stands right now. Trump, reading back on the Fulton County charges, I have irrefutable election fraud evidence, complete exoneration, from Ryan Saavedra. Former President Trump responded on Tuesday to being charged this week in a RICO case in Fulton County by claiming that he has evidence that will be a complete exoneration for him and will lead to all the charges against him being dropped. A large, complex, detailed, but irrefutable report on the presidential election fraud, which took place in Georgia. It was terrible. The worst election fraud is almost complete and will be presented by me, your favorite president, at a major news conference at 11 a.m. on a Monday of next week in Bedminster, Trump wrote in a statement posted on social media. Based on the results of this conclusive report, all charges should be dropped against me and others. There will be a complete exoneration. They never went after those that rigged the election. Oh, we're going to be talking about this a little bit later. In fact, we're probably going to move this up just because of this. Let me rearrange a couple things here. They never went after those that rigged the election. They only went after those who fought to find the riggers. That's going to be important in the next 2 tabs. The statement from Trump comes after he was charged in a 41-count indictment, along with 18 other co-defendants on Monday. All right, well, I don't think it's probably in the best interest to show your hand until the trial, because then Jack Smith and the prosecution know what the defense is going to do, but, go on. Because I also do kind of want to see what's in your hand, but I want to focus back on the statement here because the Daily Dot had to do so. And by the way, it was a point out in a Discord server, not mine, it was in another one that was discussing this here, that our friends on the left will go to any length whatsoever to not only try to accuse somebody of saying the racist thing, but also wanting to say the racist thing or trying to dog whistle or anything else like that. Mr. Scott is here. Welcome on in. The Daily Dot. One letter off from the word he desperately wants to use. Trump's post-indictment tirade accused of racist undertones. Now, see, he wants to talk about the people who actually changed the outcome of the election, which didn't actually happen. It was the freest and fairest election in history. Now, see, when I was talking, when Midget B and John were playing Command & Conquer on stream, and I was trying to ask Midget B what he called the people that put the rigging up in the ship that he was working on, that was me trying to do something with racial undertones. This is not that. And man, was I trying to get him to say that. Oh, Midget, pay attention to the chat. What is it that you call the people that hang up the rigging on your ship? Come on, say it. I know you want to. This is from Catherine Huggins. Former President Trump railed against the 41-count indictment brought against him and 18 of his allies on Monday, posting on Truth Social that the Fulton County DA's decision to charge him over his efforts to overturn the 2020 election was part of a witch hunt. But one post criticizing the indictment has caught the attention of Trump opponents who expressed skepticism about the intent of his message. On Tuesday morning, Trump wrote that he will present irrefutable report about the election fraud that he alleges took place in Georgia next Monday. Based on the results of this conclusive report, all charges should be dropped against me immediately. They only went after those that fought to find the riggers. We'll paraphrase because we already read this once. Riggers. Filthy riggers. After Trump's post, riggers began trending on Twitter/X. Some alleged that wasn't what Trump meant, and it was a racist code. Well, you guys have been saying for the last 7 years that everything that he says is a racist code, so forgive me if I don't believe you. Mr. Scott says if Kamala was explaining it, the problem with racism is racist people, because racist people do racist things, and that causes racism, which is the problem that we have to solve. And we solve the problem by doing problem-solving exercises. Veering awfully close to a slur while others crack jokes about his usage of the word. He wrote riggers, but we know exactly what he meant, wrote film producer and former Clinton aide Keith Boykin. Yeah, that's somebody who's completely objective in this. I can't read riggers without immediately imagining Scooby-Doo in a Klan hood, joked a second person. And by the way, if you go looking for racism, you're gonna find it. Which is something I've been saying for a long, long time. Even the Krappensteins got into it. Now, Ed Krasenstein, by the way, has been coming in and asking, what are your thoughts? Lately a lot. One thing that I kind of announced on Twitter, it was the political palm that started this here. And I do encourage those of you who use the platform to do the same. Yes, it can be fun to go back out and try to actually debate with some of these people, but keep in mind, Ed Krasenstein makes $18,000 a month based on interactions when you guys go back and comment on his stuff. And I will not be contributing to another red cent of anything going in with Ed Krasenstein. So we'll show it on the show, but not scroll down enough to get an ad off of it. Mind you, we won't see it on the screen here because I'm an ad blocker, but yeah, I will not be contributing. I will not be going into the debate or encouraging anybody else to get into the debate. I won't be quote tweeting or anything else that will draw more eyes to this because, you know what, I'm not going to give another penny to the Krasensteins. Is it just me, or does Trump's new term riggers, referring to people who, in his imagination, believes rigged the election against him, bother you too? Does this term not border on being derogatory? I don't know what his mindset is, but couldn't you come up with a better word to refer to these people who he claims cheated him? To be honest, I doubt Trump thought this through and meant it in a derogatory way, but it certainly sounds pretty bad. What are your thoughts? Well, my thoughts are, if you go looking for racism, you're going to find it. And of course, Ed Krasenstein is out stirring the pot because he wants to get more of those sweet, sweet engagements. Because that adds up to another quarter penny every single time somebody sees an ad somewhere down in this feed. Alright, some of the other people involved who are lesser known. Who is Trevian Kuti, publicist who once worked with Kanye West, named as Trump co-defendant in Georgia indictment. From Caitlin O'Kane. Former President Trump and 18 other people have been indicted by a Georgia grand jury on Monday on charges related to the alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election. One of the 18 alleged co-conspirators is Trevian Kuti, a publicist who often posts pro-Trump sentiments on social media and once worked with Kanye West. Kuti posted about the indictment after Fulton County DA Fani Willis announced it late on Monday. On Instagram, Kuti shared a screenshot of a TMZ article announcing Kuti, West's former publicist, was indicted. She also posted a pro-Trump meme, which is common on her social media pages. According to the indictment, Kuti was recruited by Harrison Floyd, the leader of the Black Voices for Trump and a co-defendant in the indictment, to travel from Chicago to Atlanta, where she was tasked with contacting Ruby Freeman, an election worker. Kuti allegedly lied to Freeman's neighbor, saying she was a crisis manager there to help Freeman. Trump falsely accused Freeman of being a professional vote scammer and a political operative, according to the indictment. He also made the unsubstantiated claim that Freeman and her daughter wrongfully awarded Joe Biden 18,000 votes while they were working at the polls in an Atlanta State Farm arena on Election Day. While Kuti said she was contacting Freeman to offer the election worker protection, Kuti allegedly contacted her in order to influence her testimony about the 2020 presidential election. During her meeting with Freeman, Kuti allegedly asked her to confess to voter fraud, the false allegation that Trump pushed after losing the presidency to Biden. Well, I don't think... Well, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. We are running up on the clock, though, so... But that's who this person is and why this person is co-indicted with all the rest of this. And it does seem like just these three all come together. Who are Trevian Kuti, Harrison Floyd, and Stephen Lee, which we already looked at the one. The involvement of the trio, Trevian Kuti, Harrison Floyd, and Stephen Cliffgard Lee, in efforts to keep Trump in power, was first revealed by Reuters in a series of reports in 21 and 22. Are they going to give us into any more detail? Freeman and Moss, yes. Trevian Kuti, a publicist, traveled to Georgia days before the Selfie Fest and showed up uninvited at Freeman's door. Harrison Floyd, in a follow-up article, Reuters reported that Trump campaign aide Harrison Floyd, executive director of a group called Black Voices for Trump, told the news organization he had recruited Kuti to meet with Freeman. Floyd said that he then participated in by phone in a meeting with Kuti held with Freeman at the police station in Georgia Cobb County. And Stephen Lee, an Illinois-based former police officer, as the man who sought Floyd's help with Freeman, drawing on police body cam footage and other reporting. In December 2020, Reuters reported that Lee had visited Freeman's house himself, but was turned away by the frightened election worker. Lee, in a brief interview at his home in Montgomery, Illinois, did not dispute that he visited Freeman, but declined to discuss why or whether someone had sent him. So that's who those three are. And the last thing that we have on this is a statement from one Hillary Rodham Clinton. Hillary Clinton tells Rachel Maddow that efforts to put Trump in jail show democracy is working and condemns election denial. No, that is, their hegemony is working. From Joe McKinnon. Failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton told MSDNC's Rachel Maddow on Monday that attempts to cast doubt on legitimate electoral results and to deceive the populace are hallmarks of authoritarian dictatorial leaders. Well, you would know. Clinton further claimed the latest effort by Democratic prosecutors to throw Trump's top rival in jail are a sign that the system is working. Clinton, who recently suggested Trump supporters were responsible for summer heat, made it clear that it's not simply Trump who might have to be held accountable to preserve American democracy, which means, of course, Democrats' hegemony. Having equated accountability to criminal charges, the 75-year-old said that she hopes to see accountability for a political party that was just thrown in with all the lies and the divisiveness and the lack of any conscience about what was being done to the country, referring to the GOP. Let's listen to what it is that she had to say.
Joe Biden, the president, can't really talk about this because it's this Justice Department that is at the helm of the federal probes. But Hillary Clinton did weigh in. Here she was.
Well, it's hard to believe. I don't feel any satisfaction. I feel great, just great, profound sadness that we have a former president who has been indicted for so many charges that went right to the heart of whether or not our democracy would survive.
It was pretty remarkable to see that, because Democrats in the main are not talking about this, because the president especially cannot, must not, will not talk about this. I think that's very smart. Biden has to stay out of it.
What is he specifically charged with here?
Yeah, it's a sad day for our democracy. I wonder how many prosecutors were threatened with death if they didn't give the results that Hillary wanted. It'd be an interesting survey to have. All right. A couple more here, then we'll finish off for the day. It's just some unrelated things here. Back in the Mar-a-Lago case, from ABC News, Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira pleads not guilty to new charges and documents probe. Good. I'm guessing they were probably hoping that he would flip if they attempted charges at him. Look, come on, just plead down. Say guilty, and we'll plead down. We'll give you we'll give you 3 months of supervised release from jail and maybe a little bit of a fine, and then you just tell us everything that we want to hear, whether it's true or not, about Donald Trump. I'm willing to bet that conversation actually happened at some point. Carlos de Oliveira, the property manager at the former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, who is facing his first charges in Special Counsel Smith's document probes, which, by the way, means they're going to go railroad him again. Oh, we had Dual Helix jumping over to the Rumble side. Spartan's over here too. Wow, we lost a lot of things here. Why am I at Chooch, Mr. Scott? Another chosen one inciting racism. I saw the video she was stacking votes to beat Trump. She was spotting it the whole time she streamed it. Tell Ruby Freeman to not piss on my head and tell me it's raining. Oof. Some of the stuff I gotta skip because it's YouTube. Bill is more of a B now than Will Smith. Oh, that Ed. I was gonna say, what the hell did I do? Imagine the smell. I had to switch to Rumble. It was getting spicy. Yeah, it was. De Oliveira appeared in court on Fort Pierce, Florida, with his local counsel, Donnie Merle. A local prosecutor for the special counsel's office, Michael Thakur, appeared for Smith's office. This was the third time De Oliveira appeared in court to be arraigned after he previously hadn't yet finalized arrangements for local counsel. Trump pled not guilty in June to 37 counts related to his handling of classified materials after the prosecutor said he repeatedly refused to return hundreds of documents of classified information ranging from U.S. nuclear secrets to the nation's defense capabilities, which are probably, in reality, Melania's chicken Kiev recipe and funny drawings of Mark Milley. And we'll never know because we'll never be able to see them. Trump, Nauta, and De Oliveira are all facing new charges in the superseding indictment, including that they conspired to obstruct justice by attempting to delete Mar-a-Lago surveillance footage that prosecutors say showed employees moving boxes around in order to conceal information from the FBI and grand jury, according to the indictment. Again, with Nauta and De Oliveira, I guarantee that the conversation has at least once been said in a courtroom. Just say that Trump admitted that he had these documents. Whether he did or not, just say that. And this all goes away. And on the Hunter side, from Politico, attorney is dropping representation of Hunter Biden. From Andrew Zhang. Hunter's lead attorney defending him in a federal criminal investigation will stop representing him because he could be called as a witness in the case of plea negotiations, broke down according to a Tuesday morning court filing. Which, by the way, probably tells me that something untoward went on there. Christopher Clark, a high-profile litigator who has also defended big-name business people and celebrities like Elon Musk and Mark Cuban, has represented the president's son throughout his legal troubles. Biden was set to enter a plea deal in federal court last month, but the agreement hit a roadblock after the judge questioned the potential immunity it would grant him. Negotiations for a plea deal are now at an impasse, according to David Weiss, the prosecutor who has looked into Biden's taxes for years. A.G. Garland on Friday granted Weiss's special counsel status, making sure, of course, that anything that they bring forward in the congressional appeal can be blocked as, hey, this is part of an ongoing investigation, I can't comment on this. It's like pleading the fifth, but without the taint that the left has already put onto it. It appears that the negotiation and drafting of the plea agreement and diversion agreement will be contested, and Mr. Clark is a recipient witness to those issues. Biden's team wrote in a court filing, "It is inadvisable for Mr. Clark to continue counsel in this case." So that tells me something happened. From the Daily Wire, ex-FBI agent says IRS whistleblower was right. Bidens were tipped off during investigation. No shit, Sherlock. From Tim Pierce. In other news, water is wet. A former FBI agent who worked on the investigation into Hunter has corroborated a major claim made by whistleblower and IRS supervisory agent Gary Shapley. The unnamed retired FBI supervisory special agent testified to the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability in a closed-door session. On July 17th, the committee released the 65-page transcript of that testimony on Monday. It's hearsay! There's no evidence of all this! I can already hear the leftoids getting ready to go start screaming this. By the way, isn't it funny that this transcript came out yesterday? It got almost completely ignored, and as soon as it came out, we had Indictment 4. The ex-agent backed up allegations made by Shapley that President Biden's transitory team was tipped off about the FBI's intent to interview Hunter. The agent said he was notified in the evening before the date of the expected interview, planned to be held on December 8th, 2020, that the Biden transition team had been warned. I was refreshed by the testimony of Supervisor Number 2, and I believe he's correct. I believe now getting into the frame of mind, I know I was upset when I learned about it, the agent told lawmakers. In addition to the transition team, the Secret Service, which at the time had a detail guarding Hunter, was also warned. The former agent said that while he believed the Secret Service was going to be told the morning of the interview, warning the Secret Service and the FBI intended to interview Hunter was justifiable. When asked why he had been upset, the former agent clarified, "I felt it was people that did not need to know about our intent." The former agent was not able to recall who specifically told on the Biden transition team. So, unfortunately, there are a lot of problems with this testimony if this played out the way that the Wire reported this, and that's the fact that we're actually going to need to see some records of, number one, who tipped them off, the detailed reporting of why, but now we have a jumping off point again to investigate from. Now we know what we're looking for, instead of just, for lack of a better term, witch hunting. You're actually looking for somebody who did tip off and somebody who would have been working closely enough to this unnamed agent that the unnamed agent would know about the tip-off. It's not the smoking gun, but it's an arrow to the smoking gun. And the last one, Dual Helix says, do I have to post a link to Hunter's crappy paintings, or did I make my point? No, I get what you're saying. If I made a crappy website and sold crappy paintings, how much do you think I'd make? Well, your name isn't Biden, so probably not that much. Jack shit, that's how much. That's right. From CNBC, the last one we'll do here, Feds say Hunter Biden gun charge diversion deal no longer valid, deny that they reneged on the plea agreement. Really? Because everybody knew that it was there. You completely reneged on it. From Dan Mangan. Federal prosecutors on Tuesday said a pretrial diversion deal that they had offered to Hunter on a felony gun charge did not take effect, despite what lawyers for the son of President Biden are arguing. Special counsel Weiss also accused Hunter's defense attorneys of inaccurately characterizing the collapse of the renewed plea negotiations, which fell apart last week after a judge raised questions about the deals Weiss was offering. Earlier Tuesday, one of Hunter's lawyers asked the judge in the case for permission to withdraw from the case, citing the likelihood he'll be a witness to the failed plea negotiations. Weiss originally said he would not recommend jail time for Hunter if he pleaded guilty on July 26 to 2 misdemeanors of failure to pay federal income taxes. And the prosecutor was also willing to allow Hunter to avoid conviction and have the felony firearm charge dropped if he abided by the conditions of the agreement over 2 years. The government did not renege on the previously agreed upon plea agreement, Weiss said in the new filing in the U.S. District Court in Delaware. The defendant chose to plead not guilty at the hearing of July 26, 2023, and U.S. probation declined to approve the proposed diversion agreement. At that hearing, wrote Weiss, who is also a U.S. attorney for Delaware. Thus, neither proposed agreement has entered into effect. Well, it'll get interesting, it'll get spicy, and the DOJ will never bring charges. So do keep that in mind. Alright, and that is what we have for the news for the day. Quite a bit of good stuff that we had here, but today is Tuesday, which means it's time for the rules of acquisition. Still going to find a new fandom, by the way, to go through, because we're going to be running out of rules pretty soon. As we always do on Friday, or Tuesday, not Friday, on Tuesday, we look at the Ferengi's Code of Religious Conduct. These 400 rules are what the Ferengi use to determine how a fellow Ferengi has lived his life, whether or not he will get into the Divine Treasury at all, and once he's in the Divine Treasury, how much capital he will have to bid on his next life. We look at these rules of acquisition one at a time, look at how they are used in the canon, how they're used in the story, and how they're used for the characters that the writers created for the Ferengi, but also take a time and look and see if and how we can use them in our real life. Because despite Roddenberry being an avowed communist and hating capitalism, and probably hating the religion that the Ferengi were able to come up, or the writers were able to come up with for the Ferengi, Roddenberry was probably rolling over in his grave when that started up. A lot of these rules actually lend themselves to real life, surprisingly, as we go through. I did this as a joke initially, but I mean, looking at a lot of these, it's like, hey, we can actually use these in our business dealings day to day. The 216th rule of acquisition today is probably pretty obvious. This is from a novel which I've not read, so I don't know how it was used in beta canon, but the 216th rule of acquisition is never gamble with a telepath. I feel like that's pretty obvious. If your gambling partner can read your mind of a couple things there. Number one, they know they're like, if you're playing cards, first and foremost, they can see your hand. Like, they can look through your eyes and see your hand because they can read your mind and they know what's in your hand. But furthermore, even if that wasn't the immediate case for the telepathy, they can also, and this would go too with an empath, which I would think would make Deanna Troi a dangerous person to play cards with, even though she was in the officer's poker game in Next Generation. But she would be a hard one to play poker with because she can sense when you're bluffing, when you feel the innate bit of fear on whether or not your bluff will come back out or whether you've actually you're putting your best cards on the table. But even furthermore, like if you're playing Domcot, or what were the other ones? I can't think of the names of the other games that they played at Quarks, not the card games. There were two of them. God, I can hear them screaming, but I just can't think of them. Dabo. Like if you're playing Dabo and you've got the weighted or the magnets on the wheels, which Quark totally did. He admitted to it. And you could switch the wheels to winning or losing on the Dabo tables. Your telepath is going to know that and probably walk away given the fact that he or she knows that the odds are stacked against him. What's the other one? Tango, that's the one. The card game that Jadzia liked to play all the time, Tango, where basically, what is it? Invest, evade. I gotta look that one back up. But again, that's another card game. It's on the line of poker where the telepath is going to know what's in your hand, or at least know if you're bluffing or not. I want to see if there actually is either rules for an actual real game of Tango, or if that's something I could write. I've never tried to write a card game before, but try to make it as real to the show as possible. But the 216th rule of acquisition: never gamble with a telepath. Sage advice for anybody who would like to go out and do some gambling. Let's head out of here for the night. Gotta switch some music up here. Even though we've got some nice Zelda music going on right now, it's time to switch it up. Change it up, switch it up, and let's head out of here for the night. Where's my outro music? There it is. Alright, so with that, we have finished out for the night. I'm getting hungry. I've got some shaved steak that I'm going to make up here, make into a makeshift Philly cheesesteak. I think that's going to be epic tonight. Definitely looking forward to that. But we're out of here. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Have a fantastic night. Call your friends, hug your family. Find out how everybody's doing. Go have a brew. It's summertime. Go have yourself a drink. It's going to be a fantastic time. We will be back here tomorrow. Probably talking about more indictment news, even though we'll push that to the back burner as we usually do with that. We'll be talking about probably some more stuff with the economy. We'll see if the Dow recovers from its 300-point loss today. We will see what's happening with the weather, with the GOP turnout, of course, if we get some Senate confirmations, and a host of other things, because we never know what's going to happen in the next 22 hours. Come back and join. Have a great night. Get some dinner. Take care, get some good rest, and we will see you here tomorrow for more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. And until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.